Welcome back. Today we have an enormous amount of ground to cover because we are turning our attention to an entity that has, well, essentially defined the architecture of modern noise for nearly 40 years.
That's a great way to put it.
We're looking at a project that's so often mistaken for a traditional rock band, but for the vast majority of its existence, it was the singular, uncompromising vision of one man. We are talking, of course, about Nine Inch Nails.
And it feels like a particularly relevant subject right now. I mean,
Yeah.
as we're talking here in early 2026, Nine Inch Nails is having this huge renaissance.
They really are.
They just wrapped up a massive year with the Tron Ares soundtrack, and now they're gearing up for the second leg of the Peel It Back tour. It feels like they're everywhere again.
Absolutely. And to understand the magnitude of where they are today, you have to go back, way back to the industrial landscape of the late 1980s.
Yeah.
So that's the goal for our discussion. We want to trace that entire historical arc. We want to understand how a janitor working the night shift in a Cleveland recording studio managed to create a sound that bridged this gap between abrasive industrial noise and really accessible pop structure.
And then take that all the way to winning Academy Awards and getting into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's a fascinating journey of control, chaos, and evolution.
And I think the most important distinction to make right from the start is the difference between Nine Inch Nails, the studio entity, and Nine Inch Nails, the live act.
Yes. That is probably the number one thing to get straight. For decades, the liner notes were very, very specific. They would just say, Nine Inch Nails is Trent Reznor.
That was it.
That was it. Until 2016, Trent Reznor was the only official member. The studio recordings were entirely him, the writing, the arranging, performing almost every single instrument.
And the live band was something else entirely.
A completely separate thing. It was a rotating cast of, very talented musicians who were brought in to interpret that material on a stage. It wasn't until Atticus Ross joined officially that one-man band dynamic formally changed.
But for the first, nearly 30 years? This was Reznor's singular headspace.
Absolutely.
So let's unpack the origins. We have to go back to Cleveland, Ohio. The year is 1987. Trent Reznor isn't an industrial icon yet. He's actually playing keyboards for a synth pop band.
Yeah, a band called Exotic Birds. And he's working at a place called Right Track Studios. But he wasn't a producer at this stage. He was an assistant engineer and, maybe more importantly, the janitor.
And he had a very specific arrangement with the studio owner, a man named Bart Coster.
He did. The deal was Reznor would clean the floors, scrub the toilets, maintain the entire facility. In exchange, Coster allowed him to use the studio during what they called dead time.
The unused hours.
Exactly. Those hours in the middle of the night when it was just empty. And he could go in and record his own demos.
There's a great quote from Coster about it. He said it cost him nothing more than a little wear on his tape heads.
Which turned out to be a massive understatement, considering what those tapes eventually became. But what's really interesting about this period is the decision Reznor made about the instrumentation.
He didn't form a band.
Well, he tried to. He initially looked for other musicians to play the material he was writing, but he just couldn't find anyone who could articulate the sound the way he heard it in his head.
So he decided to just do it all himself.
Precisely. He adopted this kind of Prince-like approach. He decided he was going to play everything, keyboards, guitars, bass chords, and he programmed all the drums electronically.
A decision born out of necessity, really.
It was, but it established a whole ethos of total control that would define the project for decades to come.
The first live performance, that was in October of 1988 in Pittsburgh.
Yes, at a club called Graffiti. That was the debut of Nine Inch Nails as a live act.
Okay, so then there's the name, Nine Inch Nails. It sounds incredibly heavy. It seems so laden with meaning. You hear all these theories about it referencing the crucifixion or the fingernails of Freddy Krueger.
And you can see why people would think that.
Yeah.
But the reality is actually much more pragmatic.
Which is almost more interesting.
It is. He chose the name simply because it abbreviated easily to NIANN. He just liked how it looked as a logo. It was clean, it was graphic.
Speaking of the logo, that iconic design with the backwards N.
Yeah, he worked with a designer named Gary Talpas on that. And the inspiration wasn't anything dark or industrial. It was actually inspired by the typography on a Talking Heads album.
Remain in light.
That's the one. So the name and the logo weren't about some deep religious statement. It was about graphic design and an aesthetic that just felt correct for the sound he was creating.
So these midnight sessions at Right Track, they eventually result in a set of demos that have become pretty well known among fans. Purest Feeling.
That's right. But it's important to note, this was not the debut album that we all know today.
No, the difference is it's stark.
It really is. The purest feeling demos were much lighter, more in the vein of standard synth pop. They had more live drumming, a very different feel. It wasn't until Reznor signed with TVT Records and began work on the actual debut, Pretty Hate Machine, that the sound hardened significantly.
And he brought in some key collaborators for that?
He did. He worked with producers like Adrian Sherwood and, crucially, Mark Ellis, better known as Flood.
Flood is such a key figure in this entire history. His name just keeps popping up.
He is absolutely crucial. Flood helped Reznor construct what critics later described as industrial strength noise over a pop framework, and that is the magic formula of early Nine Inch Nails.
You have these abrasive, mechanical textures, all these samples, but underneath it all, there's a traditional verse-chorus song.
A pop song, basically. A very angry pop song, but a pop song nonetheless.
Pretty Hate Machine comes out in 1989. It didn't just explode overnight, but it had this incredible slow burn.
It really did. The first single, Down In It, actually ended up charting on the dance charts, which is a bit of an anomaly when you think about it.
It is strange.
And the album just stayed on the Billboard 200 chart for 113 weeks. It just wouldn't go away. It eventually became one of the first independently released records to achieve platinum status.
But we have to talk about the Dance Party USA appearance. This is one of the more surreal moments in the band's history. An industrial band on a teen dance show in 1989.
It is just bizarre. The story goes that the band was asked what shows they wanted to appear on for promotion. And as a joke, and perhaps, not in a completely sober state of mind,
Probably not.
they suggested Dance Party USA, assuming it was the most absurd option possible and that it would never, ever happen.
And then they got booked.
To their complete surprise, they were booked. So there is this amazing archival footage of Trent Reznor looking incredibly intense, performing on this bubbly, very bright teen show. It's a strange artifact from those early days before the mystique was fully established.
As we move into the early 1990s, the entire tone just shifts drastically. The success of Pretty Hate Machine ends up causing a huge amount of conflict.
It leads to the first major battle for control. TVT Records, they saw the pop success of the debut, and all they wanted was for Reznor to replicate that synth pop sound. They wanted Pretty Hate Machine Part 2.
And they were pressuring him, interfering with the creative process.
Constantly. And Reznor, being who he is, just rebelled completely. He refused to compromise.
He literally went underground to avoid their interference.
He did. He started recording secretly under different pseudonyms just to avoid the label knowing he was even working on new music. He was fully prepared to just end the project rather than compromise his vision.
And this is where Jimmy Iovine and Interscope Records come into the picture.
Right. They saw the potential. They saw the conflict. They managed to basically extricate Reznor from the TVT situation. They bought him out, and they established a new imprint for him called Nothing Records.
Which finally gave him the creative freedom he'd been fighting for. And to use that freedom, he moved to Los Angeles. But he moved into a very specific location.
A very specific and very infamous location. He moved into 150 Cielo Drive.
The house where the Manson family murders of Sharon Tate and her friends took place?
The very same house. And he built a studio in there, and he dubbed it Le Pig.
Which is an incredibly dark thing to name your studio. It's a direct reference to the crime.
It is, and you can hear that environment just seeking into the music he made there. This is where the Broken EP was created in 1992. And if Pretty Hate Machine had any kind of pop sheen, Broken was just a blast of pure destruction.
It was so much heavier.
So much heavier. It was guitar-driven. It was faster. It was infinitely more aggressive. It was a direct sonic reaction to the label pressure and the frustration of the past couple of years.
And yet, despite being so abrasive, it won awards.
It did. The song Wish won a Grammy for Best Metal Performance, which was a huge validation. It showed that the mainstream was actually ready to embrace this harsh sound as long as it was delivered with that level of authenticity.
We should also talk about the visual component of this era because it was just as confrontational. Specifically, the Broken movie.
The Broken movie is something else.
Mm-hmm.
It was directed by Peter Christopherson of Throbbing Gristle and Coil, so you know the sensibility he's bringing.
A pioneer of industrial music himself.
Exactly. And the film wove together the music videos from the EP into this narrative that depicted the torture and murder of a young man. It was never officially released because of how graphic it was.
But it got out there.
How it circulated widely. Through bootleg tape trading, it became this sort of underground legend. It just created this aura of genuine danger and taboo around the band.
And that danger really set the stage for what many people consider to be Reznor's magnum opus, which came in 1994, The Downward Spiral.
This is where those sessions at the Le Pig studio culminated. The Downward Spiral is this epic concept album. It details a protagonist's complete descent into madness, addiction, and self-destruction.
And musically, it's just incredibly complex.
It really is. It uses dissonance, really complex time signatures. You just have to listen to a song like March of the Pigs to understand that.
Yeah.
And these extreme, quiet, loud dynamics that were becoming popular at the time, but he took them to another level.
The production on this record, it was another collaboration with Flood and also Alan Moulder.
Alan Moulder's mixing is absolutely essential here. The textures on that album, the way the noise is sculpted and layered, it just changed how people thought about rock production. It wasn't just a band in a room anymore. This was sophisticated, meticulous sound design.
Culturally, the album was just massive. The song Closer became this defining hit of the decade.
Closer is such a fascinating case study. The music video, which was directed by Mark Romanek, used all this imagery that was fetishistic and disturbing. It referenced early photography, religious iconography, animal cruelty.
It was heavily censored by MTV. They had to replace huge chunks of it with a scene missing card.
Right. And despite that, or maybe because of it, it became iconic. The song itself, it's about this desperate desire for completion through another person, but it's phrased in the most base, animalistic terms possible.
And then at the other end of the album's emotional spectrum, you have Hurt.
Hurt is the emotional anchor. It's the bleakest possible ending to the album's narrative. It strips away all the industrial layers to leave you with just a voice and this dissonant, almost broken guitar line. It's all about isolation and regret.
The tour for this album, the Self-Destruct Tour, became legendary for just how chaotic it was.
It was violent and visceral. The band members would often come out covered in cornstarch, which gave them this ghostly kind of decaying appearance. They were smashing equipment, diving into crowds every night. But the defining moment of this whole era was Woodstock 94.
That performance is often cited as one of the most important in the entire history of that festival.
It has to be. The band went on stage completely, and I mean completely, caked in mud from the festival grounds. It had been raining. It was a mess.
And they just leaned into it.
They completely embraced it. And it was broadcast on pay-per-view to 24 million households. It perfectly captured the dirty, gritty, chaotic aesthetic of the music, and it just catapulted them from being a big cult act to a genuine stadium phenomenon almost overnight.
Following that massive success of the Downward Spiral, there was a pretty significant gap in output.
A very long and difficult period. Reznor was really struggling. He was dealing with addiction, with severe writer's block, and just the immense pressure of trying to follow up a masterpiece.
So it took 5 years to follow up that success.
5 years, and when he finally returned in 1999, he didn't come back with a single album. He released a double album, The Fragile.
Which is a sprawling, incredibly ambitious piece of work.
It's massive. And his approach was different. He said he was doing songwriting and sound design at the same time. The sounds would inspire the songs would inspire the sounds. It was a very fluid process.
And how was it received?
It was polarizing. It debuted at #1 on the charts, which was huge. But then it experienced a historic drop in sales the very next week. Some critics found it bloated and indulgent. Pitchfork famously panned the lyrics, but then a magazine like Spin named it their album of the year.
This era also saw some very public conflict, which was evident in the song Starfuckers, Inc.
Oh, absolutely. That track was a blistering satire of the alternative music scene and the nature of fame. It was widely, and probably correctly, interpreted as being directed at his former protege, Marilyn Manson.
But then Manson appeared in the music video.
He did,
Yeah.
and he performed the song live with the band. It was this very public truce, and it really showed Reznor's ability to kind of manipulate and play with the media narrative. He turned a diss track into a collaboration.
Unfortunately, the personal struggles from that 5-year gap, they didn't go away. They reached a breaking point in June of 2000 with an overdose in London.
Yeah, that was the rock bottom moment. It led to the immediate cancellation of the rest of the tour, and eventually it forced Reznor to enter rehab. The project, 9 Inch Nails, just went on an indefinite hiatus while he focused on his recovery.
It was during this hiatus in 2002 that Johnny Cash released his cover of Hurt.
A monumental moment. Reznor has spoken about this quite a bit. He said when he first heard the cover, it felt invasive. He described it as feeling like someone had just read his diary.
I can understand that. It's such a personal song.
It is. But then he saw the music video that Mark Romanek also directed. And that video contextualized the song through the lens of Cash's entire life, his legacy, and his impending mortality. And Reznor said his whole perspective changed.
He acknowledged the power of it.
He did. He famously said, "That song isn't mine anymore." He understood that Cash's interpretation had given it a new weight, a new meaning that was just as valid, if not more so.
Reznor eventually returned in 2005, sober, and with a renewed focus. The album was With Teeth.
This was the comeback record, written entirely post-rehab. And at the same time, he was concluding this really nasty legal battle with his former manager, John Malm Jr., a fraud lawsuit that resulted in a nearly $3 million judgment in Reznor's favor.
So he was cleaning house personally and professionally.
Completely. And the album reflects that. With Teeth was a much more straightforward, song-oriented rock record. A lot of people called it vintage N. Einan. And it featured Dave Grohl on drums for many of the tracks.
Which gave it this incredible power.
A huge, powerful sound. It was the sound of someone re-engaging with the world.
This era also marked the beginning of Reznor's embrace of digital innovation.
Yes. This was a really important shift. He released the source files, the multi-tracks, for the singles, The Hand That Feeds, and Only. He just put them out there for fans to remix using software like GarageBand or Pro Tools.
Which was pretty unheard of at the time.
It was a move that really embraced the fan community and technology in a way that major artists just weren't doing.
And that digital engagement just escalated with the 2007 album, Year Zero.
Year Zero was something else entirely. It was a concept album, a piece of political criticism aimed at U.S. policies at the time, but it was set in a dystopian future, the year 2022.
And the narrative was really detailed.
Oh, incredibly. There's a whole story about a theocratic government that puts a drug called paraffin in the water supply to keep the population docile, and an underground resistance movement called Art is Resistance.
And the marketing for it wasn't marketing at all. It was an alternate reality game, an ARG.
Right. It was this incredibly immersive experience that unfolded in the real world. Clues were hidden on the back of tour T-shirts. USB drives with unreleased songs on them were literally left in bathroom stalls at concert venues for fans to find.
There were websites that seemed to be from the future sending warnings back to us in 2007.
It completely blurred the lines between the album's fiction and our reality. It was a groundbreaking way to release a record.
This was also the period when Reznor really broke away from the corporate music structure for good.
He'd had growing animosity toward his label, Interscope, for years, particularly over the pricing of his albums in places like Australia, where they were being sold for exorbitant amounts.
He famously told fans at a concert to just steal his music.
He did. He said, steal it. Steal it and steal it and steal it and give it to all your friends and keep stealing it. And not long after that, he left the label completely. He became a free agent.
And in 2008, he proved he didn't need them. He released Ghosts, IA, and The Slip completely independently.
Ghosts was this massive 36-track instrumental collection that he released under a Creative Commons license, encouraging people to share it and use it. And then The Slip was just free.
Yeah.
He put it on his website with the message, "This one's on me." It was a gift to the fans.
He was proving that an artist of his stature could thrive outside the traditional system.
And he was way ahead of the curve on that.
In 2009, though, he announced the Wave Goodbye tour, and he stated that Nine Inch Nails would stop touring for the foreseeable future.
It seemed like the end of an era. He stepped away from the road, he got married to Marikeen Mondig, and he formed a new band with her called How to Destroy Angels. But crucially, this is when he pivoted to film scoring.
The collaboration with Atticus Ross on David Fincher's The Social Network in 2010, that was a major turning point.
It completely redefined his career. I don't think anyone saw it coming. And then they won the Golden Globe, and then they won the Academy Award for Best Original Score.
A rock star from the 90s winning an Oscar.
It proved that his deep understanding of texture, of mood, of atmosphere, it translated perfectly to cinema. And they followed that success with incredible scores for The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and Gone Girl, both also for Fincher.
But Nine Inch Nails wasn't gone for good. The project returned in 2013 with hesitation marks.
It did. That album was a return, but with a different feel. It was more of an art rock record, more expansive. He brought in some surprising personnel, like Lindsey Buckingham from Fleetwood Mac and the legendary session bassist Pino Palladino.
There was still some friction with the mainstream industry, though. The 2014 Grammy performance comes to mind.
Oh, that was a moment. The band was part of this big finale performance with Queens of the Stone Age and Dave Grohl, and their performance was cut off by commercials and the closing credits.
And Reznor was not happy.
Not at all. He went on Twitter immediately and posted a very strong, profane dismissal of the entire organization. It showed he still had that confrontational spirit.
Then in 2016, a major structural change happened. Atticus Ross became an official member of the band.
That's right. After years of collaboration, Ross became the only other official member of Nine Inch Nails in its entire history.
And together they released a trilogy of EPs, or what started as a trilogy.
Right. It was not the actual events in 2016, Add Violence in 2017, and then Bad Witch in 2018, which was intended as the third EP, but they ultimately classified it as a full album. This whole era was characterized by a return to a more experimental, abrasive, and noisy sound.
And during this time, the music also reached a completely different audience in 2019 through a very unexpected source.
Old Town Road,
Old Town Road.
the biggest song in the world. Lil Nas X sampled a track from the Ghosts album, 34 Ghosts the 4, for his breakout hit. And because of that, Reznor and Ross ended up winning a Country Music Association award.
A CMA award. You couldn't make it up.
It just highlights the incredible and sometimes strange breadth of their influence.
Then, in 2020, came the big institutional recognition. Nine Inch Nails was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
A huge moment. It was a virtual induction because of the pandemic, but Reznor made a really important point of advocating for his longtime live band members to be included.
So it wasn't just him and Ross?
No. He made sure Chris Renna, Danny Lohner, Alessandro Cortini, Ilan Rubin, and Robin Fink were inducted alongside them. It was this great gesture that finally acknowledged the truly collaborative nature of the live show that had been going for decades.
Bringing us closer to the present, the band remained active through the early 2020s.
During the pandemic, in March 2020, they released 2 more Ghosts albums for free, Ghosts Z Together and Ghosts 6, Locusts, just as a show of solidarity.
Right.
But the last couple of years, leading up to right now, have been really significant.
In April 2024, they announced a new multimedia company called With Teeth.
Yeah, this is a big deal. It's this new umbrella for all their various projects. There are collaborations with Epic Games in their AFN ecosystem, a TV series with Christopher Storer, the creator of The Bear, and a film with Mike Flanagan.
So it represents a huge expansion of the brand beyond just music.
It's about storytelling in all its forms.
And on the music front, we got the Tron Ours score.
Announced in 2024 and released in conjunction with the film. What's notable is that it's credited to Nine Inch Nails, the band, not just Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross.
Which implies a different sound.
A more band-oriented, probably more aggressive sound. And the lead single, As Alive as You Need Me to Be, which came out in July 2025, seems to confirm that. It's already been nominated for a Grammy.
There are also some significant lineup changes in 2025.
There were. The incredible drummer Ilan Rubin departed to join the Foo Fighters. But in his place, Josh Freese, who drummed for the band back during the With Teeth era, rejoined the lineup.
Which was a massive event for fans. Freese is considered one of the absolute premier drummers in rock
And
music.
he's a powerhouse. And he joined them for the Peel It Back tour, which brings us right up to the present day.
The tour began in the summer of 2025 and is continuing now. And they've had a special guest for part of the show.
They have. The electronic artist Boys Noise has been joining them for the third act of the shows, creating this live, collaborative, almost DJ-like set.
And that collaboration has officially evolved into a whole new project, which was announced in September 2025.
Yes, 9 Inch Noise. It's a supergroup, basically, consisting of NIN and Boys Noise. They're scheduled to perform at Coachella later this year in 2026.
So looking back at this entire trajectory from the janitor at Right Track Studios to the Oscar-winning composer and multimedia mogul, what is the consistent thread? What is the through line?
I think it has to be that uncompromising vision. Whether he was smashing keyboards in 1990, fighting his record label in 1992, giving away his music for free in 2008, or scoring major films, Reznor has never, ever diluted his output. He's adapted, he's matured, but he has always maintained control over the sound and the aesthetic.
It's interesting. It seems like the story of Nine Inch Nails is ultimately about learning how to collaborate. You know, it starts as this one-man show born out of a frustration that he couldn't trust anyone else to realize his vision.
And now look at it.
And now it's this highly collaborative multimedia project involving a full band, film directors, game designers. It's really a journey from total isolation to a very unique form of connection.
That's a very, very accurate assessment. The control is still there, but the circle has gotten much, much wider.
Thanks for listening.